Call this beat Will Smith, cause it slaps hard. Hear it not when I pull up on your boulevard.
So we're talking about secure love, decoding affectionate withdrawal. And again, I want to talk about this because a lot of guys have this scenario go on that I'm going to talk about that this guy wrote to me about. So he said, after 1 year of dating, the good morning and good night text are starting to disappear. When we are together, everything is great, including the hookup. The lack of texting is concerning. Now, this is about honestly, about the fourth or fifth guy in the last 2 or 3 weeks or so that have sent me a similar message where it's like, they say, hey, so me and this girl, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. We've been dating for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And in the beginning, she was texting me a whole lot. And now the texts are starting to fall off. Even though in person, she's still hooking up with me 3 or 4 times a day, but I'm just not getting those texts. What's going on with that? I feel there's a concern here. And I get it, because we're looking at patterns of behavior. And a lot of times, if we notice any kind of deviation from a pattern, we start to worry and think, wow, this pattern's no longer the same as it was before. There must be something suspicious going on. Either she's stepping out on me or she's losing feeling for me. And all these other various things could be happening that are positive, but these couple of things over here are starting to make me worry, all right? And so I wanted to talk about this concept called affectionate withdrawal, right? And this is, affectionate withdrawal is that in the course of a relationship, as a woman starts to be around you more and trust you more and feel more secure, then a lot of the things she was doing early on in the relationship in order to try to facilitate that bond and that trust is to her no longer necessary. And I'm actually going to show this video by this guy. His name is Brian. I don't know. He has a channel on YouTube called PsycHacks, which I'm a big fan of. And he talks about a variety of issues. And most recently, he did a video talking about why it is that hooking up with a partner starts to dwindle in marriage. And it's not for such a negative reason as people think. So I'm going to pull his video up and I'm going to play through parts of this and stop and start, because the stuff he talks about in this video, I believe actually correlates very, very well with texting also in particular, but also other various things that men are looking at where they're like, this was how she was in the beginning and now this behavior's changed and I'm worried. So let's get into his video.
And it seems to be the case that the organic tendency in relationships is for the frequency and intensity of sex to decline as a function of time.
Okay, so I'm going to parallel, right? So in the beginning of a relationship, oftentimes, whether you meet them online or in person, you guys exchange each other's numbers, and then you're trying to text a whole lot because you're trying to, attempting to build rapport and establish some kind of feeling being there, and also using it a lot to set up dates, to set up meetups, to be able to say good night and good morning to each other when you're not in front of each other's presence. And by the way, I'll tell you guys extensively to across the board, not to do as much reaching out. Your job texting should be to get dates. Her job should be to try to text you to remind you that she's still there and that she misses you. And so it should be 3 to 1. For every 3 texts that she initiates, you initiate 1, with the exception being, if you're having to wait between dates to hear from her, then you initiate the text to ask for the next date, all right? But to the point, in the beginning, women are going to a lot of times be trying to text you nonstop because they're just so enthralled with you, your new stimuli, but also they're wanting to make sure you don't forget about them. So they're going to be texting you oftentimes nonstop. And guys, we eat this up. We're like, oh my God, this girl's paying us attention. She's texting us day and night, and it feels like I'm getting close to a real relationship finally. It's so great.
There are things you can do to prevent or mitigate this tendency, but doing nothing generally produces outcomes in this direction. Now, there are many reasons why this happens, because sex is actually a really complicated activity. It's not just about making babies and hedonic pleasure. There are lots of things that sex does in human relationships. And one of the most important things that it does is facilitate emotional bonding.
Okay, so what he said, hooking up a lot in the beginning, part of the reason we do that is because it's to facilitate a bond. So now let's correlate this with texting. In the beginning, when a woman realizes she has high interest in you, she's going to be texting you a lot because she's trying to really establish with you a connection. She wants to be able to show you that she cares about you and that she's wanting to actually really get with you in a real kind of way. All right. So that's going to facilitate her doing a lot of texting in the beginning when that bond isn't quite as strong, and she's doing the best that she can to see that it gets stronger.
This is largely due to the fact that certain sexual behaviors are associated with increased levels of oxytocin, the hormone that facilitates emotional bonding.
Now, what's interesting is oxytocin is also the chemical that hits our pleasure centers in our brain. You know what else also does that? Gambling. Like when you hear the bells and whistles of the machines in Vegas, this is why, like in Vegas, people get gambling problems, because part of the allure of that is we hear those little dings. It means, oh my God, we've won a prize, or we won some money, or we got a little thing in a slot machine. Where else do you also hear that ding? You also hear that ding when out of nowhere, you get a phone notification that the girl that you're talking to texts you, like, oh my God. And it makes your brain feel like you've won the jackpot. Like, yes, this girl reached out to me. I heard the ding. Oh my God, she's doing it again. And in the beginning, you're going to hear these dings quite frequently. Like, oh my God, every 5 minutes, it's ding, ding, ding. And your brain's just like, yes, 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 she likes me. I'm winning, I'm winning, winning. So can you imagine what happens to your brain when over time, it's not getting to hear those dings as much anymore? Because I know we think about texting as like, it's just messaging, but the way in which messaging happens, where we hear dings and bells and whistles, those things also play into why we get so frustrated when the person that we like suddenly stops texting as much, because we're not getting to hear those dings, i.e. our brain's not being rewarded as frequently as it was before when we were getting all the texts we wanted to hear.
The higher the oxytocin levels, the stronger the bond. This is why sex is typically so hot and heavy in the early stages of the courtship process.
And this is also why texting, it may seem like in the beginning, she's texting quite frequently, because as she's trying to establish that bond, she's going to text you a lot more until the time where she feels as though that bond is actually established.
At this stage of the relationship, neither party has any legitimate claim on the other. And so neither can reasonably expect to see that person ever again.
Okay, so now think about this with texting, right? In the beginning, like you said, neither of you have any ties to the other person. This other person doesn't have to show up ever again, whether it's they hook up with you once and then they flee, or they text and flee. But ideally, you're thinking, okay, but if I text more, and she's thinking, if I text more, then ideally, I'm doing that in part because I don't want this other person to leave while I'm trying to still establish a bond with them. I want them to see, and I need them to have all the proof in the world that they are the ones that I want to be with. And if that means I got to text them more, then that's what I'm going to do.
This creates a lot of uncertainty and insecurity, especially when there are high levels of attraction, which stimulate the impulse to solidify the emotional bond.
So what did he say right there? He said, because there's a lack of stability, then that gives both parties the incentive to text more in hopes of eventually building a secure enough bond to where that other person knows that you want them around, and vice versa.
Basically, when early couples have sex, they're functionally saying with their bodies, I want you to come back.
So again, same thing. When women are constantly texting in the beginning, they're effectively saying to you, hey, I think you're a really great guy. I want you in my life, and I want to keep seeing you. And so I'm going to keep texting you until you get the idea. And by the way, women are assuming that we don't already want to constantly see them, but like that's why they're texting a lot. So they're like, on the off chance he's not, I'm going to continuously text him. Now, I will say this. Here's a hack for you guys, right? This is also why I tell you guys time and time again, even when you get in a relationship, you should not be doing a whole lot of initiating of text, because as long as you are not the one that is initiating text, I assure you the women in your life are going to text you a lot more. Even if it starts to die down a bit, it's never going to die down to too low of levels because you're not the one that's initiating. And you should only be initiating again if you are trying to plan an activity of some kind. And then sporadically, every so often, you say, hey, just thinking of you text, but you don't send it at the level that they're going to send it, because then the balance doesn't work. I found in my personal life, it just doesn't work when the guy is constantly being the one to try to text and initiate all the time.
Stronger the bond, the more likely the person will return. This situation changes dramatically over time. Once a relationship has been defined and a commitment has been secured and a mutual lifestyle established, the idea that the other person is just going to up and leave becomes less and less of a probability. In fact, there's no need to wonder whether someone is going to come back if they never leave in the first place. The relationship becomes more secure, but in so doing, the other person becomes a sure thing. And once this happens, one of the primary functions of sex, the establishment of an emotional bond, becomes irrelevant and redundant.
All right. So here's where it is, guys. Here's where the problem lies. What did he just say? He basically said that at the point where a woman is secure in the relationship, you guys, you've gotten to that 3-month mark. You've had the what are we conversation. You've established you are now in a relationship. A lot of her worries are going to start to go away because she's thinking, oh my God, all the stuff I did for those 3 months and the unsureness, stuff like that. We're in a relationship now. I now feel secure. And so what that means also now is that she also feels as though she does not have to do all the behaviors that she was doing in an attempt to try to establish a bond and try to get into a relationship. And he's talking about, obviously hooking up here, but another primary thing that happens is that a woman and the amount of time that she's texting you will start to dissipate. And the reason that actually is, wait for it, guys, is because she's so secure in the relationship and she trusts you and she knows that you like that you like her being around and vice versa, to where she doesn't feel like that's a necessity to have to text as much because she's thinking, I did it. I'm in the relationship. I'm already secure. He knows I like him. So all that extra texting I was doing shouldn't have to be done anymore. And where guys get tripped up is we're like, but pattern change. She's not doing it as much anymore. Oh my God, what's going on? And we're thinking that this pulling away of her texting is a bad thing. And what it's actually signaling is that she's more secure in the relationship.
There is no necessity to create security in completely secure relationships. And because it's not needed, it's very hard in some cases to arouse an authentic desire for it. Few people crave food when they're not hungry.
So in other words, at the point that she gets to where you guys are in a relationship, she feels like you guys can trust each other and she's not as anxious anymore. Now, the same amount of need that she had before to text you all the time is no longer there, because part of the reason she was texting you so much was to establish that bond. At the point where she feels that you've established a bond, you guys are consistently going out, you guys are seeing each other on a regular basis, that need to text lessens by necessity, because you guys already have a bond where you're connecting more frequently, probably in person anyway, to where this aspect of it no longer is as needed to create a bond that's already been established. Now, I think at this point, he's going to get into what's the solution for guys? Because here's the thing, like I said, guys get very butthurt. We like this guy that wrote to me, right? He's been in a relationship with this girl for a year, right? And she comes over 2 or 3 times a week, bangs his brains out, does all the stuff he likes, but yet he's still worried because the texting is lessening. He's thinking this is an indicator that they're starting to bond less. And what I'm trying to show you guys is that this is actually proof that she's actually so strongly bonded to you that the bonding activities she was doing before on a more frequent basis aren't necessary, because she is feeling solidified in your two's bond. All right. And so as a guy, it can be very hard to understand this because we're very much we have things that from kid age, we still like. I've been playing Zelda since I was 8 years old. And I'm playing the new one now. That doesn't go away just because I got older, And so we can be very consistent in doing an action or liking a thing or wanting certain things to happen throughout our entire lives. Women aren't going to do that. Women are going to change up and ebb and flow based on emotions, based on how they feel about you, based on how much trust you have with them. And so we as men can't be so jarred when we start to see things like this and think that anytime a woman's starting to do less of something than she did in the beginning of a relationship, that it means that she suddenly lost feeling or that there's no bond there. So let's go into what he says is the solution to all this.
People have trouble tolerating uncertainty and insecurity, especially with people they're attracted to. And this anxiety motivates people to reduce that uncertainty and insecurity in their relationships as much and as quickly as possible.
So what he's saying basically is that at the point that we'll use the men, for example. So as men, when we start feeling insecure or anxious about stuff, For example, in this example, it's like, oh, she was texting me all the time and now she's not. I feel some kind of way about that. I'm nervous that the answer we have is I want to try to do things or make her do things that are going to lessen my anxiety. And this looks like going to her and saying, hey, so I noticed you don't text me as much as you used to. Like, I want to know what's up with that. And why don't you send me good morning texts anymore? You used to do that a lot. And now you don't. I don't know what's going on. And in our heads, we're thinking, if I present it like that, then she'll go back to doing what she was doing before. And then there'll be less anxiety on my part and I'll feel more secure. But you got to ask us the question, what does that look like to her? If you go to her and say, hey, babe, you're not texting as much as you used to, blah, 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 to her, that indicates that you're feeling insecure, which now makes her wonder, but what do you have to feel insecure about? Why is there now an insecurity and anxiousness in our relationship? What is it about this that's causing you as the guy to suddenly not have faith in what we're doing? And that can make her now question if you guys have that strong of a bond because you're questioning it. You know, that whole projection thing, you're projecting out insecurity to her. And now she has to take on that insecurity also that she didn't have before, right? So let's continue on.
And sex is one great way to do that. The issue is that no one gets aroused by security and stability.
Facts. So you guys are like, I need to be more secure. I need to get her to text me and blah, 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 blah. But that's not going to arouse her. That's not going to make her feel the same tingles for you. Like she's feeling them now when she's not texting you a whole lot because she's basking in the fact that there's such a secure bond here. And that's what she's always wanted. And you trying to address that you don't text me as much now makes her feel as though, oh, maybe this bond isn't as strong as I thought. So that's not the solution.
To keep desire alive in committed relationships, we need to have a greater collective tolerance for uncertainty and insecurity, because it's in that space that the necessity for sex as a bonding agent remains evergreen.
Now, there's a part I cut out before this where he's talking about, basically he says, how do we stop this from happening? Well, the first part is he says, I'm not going to say that you should have an affair, but I'm going to say you should act like you're having an affair, because there are certain behaviors that being in an affair facilitates that can actually spark more arousal. Okay.
I'm not advising people to go out and cheat on their spouses, but everything that goes with cheating, the space, the mystery, the novelty, the freedom, the risk, the elusiveness is really good at maintaining sexual interest.
Right. So think about this, right? Subconsciously, there is a part of your woman that she starts texting you less, and subconsciously, another reason for that is because she knows on a subconscious level that if she's constantly around you, if she's constantly hearing from you all the time, she's constantly texting you all the time, that's going to actually take away the motivation and desire she has to really be with you in the moments when she does see you. Because think about this, right? There's a difference between, if we'll start earlier in the relationship, right? If you take a woman out and then you wait 4 days or 5 days before you text her for another date, right? She's now had 4 to 5 days to wait to anticipate hearing from you again, seeing you again. And anticipation and anxiety, those things actually create motivation and desire in women to want to see you, because out of sight, she has to think about you all the time and think about how great you make her feel and think about what you're going to do to her when she sees you again. But if your guys are texting each other nonstop, there is no time for her to sit and think and wonder about you and think about, God, when I see him again, it's going to be so great. And so part of her texting less is because she wants to keep that spark alive in her. She's doing her part to see that she continues to maintain a high level of attraction by forcefully making herself not text you as much. And so when you get butthurt about it, now she's thinking, great, so I got to go back to texting him all the time. And that's going to slowly over time start to lessen her desire. She's not going to understand why, because most women aren't as conscious about this kind of stuff as I am. But all she's going to know is like, he wants me to text him more, so I'm doing that. But suddenly it's not feeling the same. It doesn't feel as close of a bond to him as when I was able to just trust that we had a great relationship, because now I got to text him nonstop, which feels like I'm having to check in on him, like I'm his mom almost. And also sometimes I have days where I don't want to text him. I have other things going on, but while I'm doing those other things, I'm thinking about him, but he's wanting me to reach out and text him. So that cuts all that. All right. And so the space away from a person can sometimes be the best space to actually have the other person build up more of a desire for you.
Stop asking permission. Do something different without telling your partner. Carve some space for yourself that doesn't involve the other person. Resist the urge to communicate throughout the day. Break out of your routines and simultaneously pull back on pursuing sex in your primary relationship. Give your partner the opportunity, the gift of wondering about you, of feeling your absence, of missing your presence. After all, you can't connect with someone if you never disengage.
Exactly. So like I said, when you give that other person space to do other things, you're giving them the freedom to not have to contact you all the time. One, that'll typically make a person want to contact you more because they know you're not going to be so upset if they don't. That now gives them the freedom to choose to contact you. And more often than not, you're going to find they're going to make that choice more in your favor when you're not bugging them. But also, yeah, to his point, the woman cannot desire you if you're constantly wanting her to contact you all the time. And obviously in a relationship, you want them to regularly be in contact with you, but trying to force her to do a specific form of contact all the time is only going to make her feel honestly resentful, but also start to get tired of you and start to lose desire. So this is why, back to this guy's original comment about, after 1 year, the text, the good night and good morning texts are starting to disappear, but everything's still great when they're together, including the hookup. Dude, that just means that she has established a strong bond with you. And, she was doing a lot of texting in the beginning to try to create that bond. It is a finished project. You are now on to the next part of the project. If she's doing all the things in person, if she's still saying yes to dates, if she's still consistently hooking up with you, if she's still doing, surprise gifts for you or cooking for you, whatever, then you're good. All right. It could very well just be that the early texting she was doing to establish that bond, she no longer feels like there's a motivation to have to do that. And also what you'll find too, if you're not pestering about it, and if you're not, because I imagine this is one of those cases probably where, like, as the guy, you're probably doing a lot of initiating in an attempt to try to reestablish a texting bond. Don't do that. You should be using the phone to set up dates specifically and just do that. And if you just keep it to texting when you're doing that, you will find that she will start to text you a bit more than she is now. But don't discount a whole relationship on account of the texting change, because the frequency of texting is going to change. At some point in your relationship, the frequency of hookups is going to change. There are going to be a plethora of other things in the course of a relationship that are going to change. Hey, you might be with a woman who in the beginning, you guys are going to movies all the time, and then she starts to go less because you find out she didn't like movies. Are you going to be butthurt because oh my gosh, she's not good? No, things are going to change because a lot of things that both sexes do in the beginning in an attempt to try to get this person, they're hard to keep up. For example, I dated a woman one time where for the first 6 months of our relationship, we were celebrating the anniversary of the day that we went out on our first date for 6 months straight. At that 6th month, I was like, yo, this is a lot. I care about you immensely, but doing this every single month, we ain't got to do that. Because in my head, I'm like, we're already together. We see each other on a consistent basis. Celebrating this milestone every single month is not a necessity. And honestly, that was a hard conversation, but she got it. She was like, I get it. Hey, we see each other. We don't have to do this every single month. And it's yeah. So that was an example of an activity that I was taking away because it was cool to do it for the first 3 or 4 months as we were trying to establish a bond. But that wasn't necessary given we were already doing a bunch of other things that established that we had a strong bond. So don't punish women if they start to slack off on texting. You're going to find, guys, a lot of women, as much as they like to text you, they're doing that to create that bond, but they want to get back to their regular life. They have other people that they're trying to hang out with, family, friends. They have jobs that they're on, and they might start to realize I did the job of establishing a bond with this guy. Now I can get back to my regular scheduled life where he's now included in it, but I'm not texting as frequently because I got other stuff I got to do besides text this guy all day. And now that we built that bond, thank God I got to do that no more. So just think about that the next time you're thinking she's pulling away because she's not texting. It could very well be she actually has such a strong bond with you that all that texting is no longer necessary. So hopefully, guys, this helps you out.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man. You a high-class man. You a high-class man. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man.